So what are the real estate experts in the country forecasting for the real estate market in 2023? The million-dollar question these days, isn't it? Well, if we look at what the top 5 are saying, that's the Mortgage Bankers Association, NAR, National Association of Realtors, Fannie Mae, Zelman, and HPES, that's the Home Price Expectation Survey. They're not expecting a big negative, fall off the cliff kind of thing like we had in 2008. What they are expecting is more of a just kind of flat market. That means stagnant, not much in the way of price increases appreciation-wise. In fact, on average, if you take all 5 of these experts and you look at their individual forecasts, you can average them out. And all 5 forecasts average out about 2% appreciation for 2023. It's nowhere near what we've had over the past 7 or 8 years, but they're not expecting the market to completely crash like some people are saying, not expecting negative equity. Maybe you'll see a little negative in certain markets or, kind of backwards growth in certain markets. That's just not expected, at least not at this time in most markets. So the question is, why would somebody buy a house in a flat market? And I have 3 reasons I think that are important to consider. If you desire to become a homeowner, maybe you're on the fence about it and you're just not sure if it's the right decision or not. So take a look at these 3 things, digest them, and see what you think and let me know. So number 1, in an inflationary economy like we're in right now, by the way, if you haven't noticed, prices of homes and pretty much everything else has been rising pretty rapidly across the board. But historically, homeownership is a great hedge against those rising costs. How's that? It's because you're able to lock in what's likely the largest monthly payment you have, your mortgage payment, right, for the duration of your loan. Although you may not like the interest rates, it locks it in, and that helps you stabilize your monthly expenses so you don't have to worry about the next rent increase like we've been seeing year after year after year, which can be pretty hard to adjust for on your monthly budget. So here's what James Royal, Senior Wealth Management Reporter of Bankrate, said. He said, quote, "A fixed rate mortgage allows you to maintain the biggest portion of housing expenses at the same payment. Sure, property taxes will rise and other expenses may creep up, but your monthly housing payment remains the same," end quote. So let's assume you don't buy a house at today's 6.5%, 7% interest and you remain renting. What do you think is going to happen with your rent over the next year or 2 or 3? Do you think it's likely to go down, or do you think your rent is going to rise? It's most likely going to rise just like it has been. And I know it kind of stinks to think about buying a house if you feel like you're paying too much on the interest, but your monthly rent or mortgage is your biggest monthly nut that you got to crack. And if you can compare your mortgage payment at today's interest rate versus what your rent is or will be if it goes up over the next couple of years, then you may not be too far off anyway. So remember, you can always refinance your house if and when the interest rates come down, which they're likely to do when inflation gets under control. So keep this in mind as well. Lawrence Yun, he's the chief economist of NAR, that's the National Association of Realtors, says that in the latest inflation report, quote, "Inflation refuses to budge. In September, consumer prices rose by 8.2%. Rents rose by 7.2%, the highest pace in 40 years. So locking in your mortgage interest rate hedges you against future inflation." Okay, so number 2 is interest rates. Lawrence Yun goes on to say that, and this was at a recent conference at Atlanta, Georgia, by the way, that we could see 8.5% interest rates. That's pretty crazy when you think about it. At the beginning of this year, we didn't think we'd see 6%, but then here we are, and then some. Think about it this way. If rates hit 8.5%, you might just be kicking yourself on not locking in at 6.5% or 7%. Keep in mind, the Fed's already said that they were going to raise the rates 2 more times before taking a pause. The mistake I see a lot of home buyers and sellers make when deciding if it's time to buy or sell is they measure the market or what they should do on the past. They look backwards when what they really should be doing is measuring their decision based on where they think it's going to go, looking ahead, looking forward to the future. Where do we think rates are going to go? Where do we think the market's going to go? The question is, would you rather pay 6.5% or 7% today or 8.5% later on? Or would you rather continue renting and risk future rent increases that are always hard to budget for? My advice is, if you're securing your job and you can afford the payment, hedge yourself against future inflation, get yourself into the market now and buy a house. If the interest rates come down, which they likely will, as soon as inflation is under control, like we said, you can always have the luxury of refinancing later. eventually rates will come down, you guys. It's not a forever thing. And number 3, the third reason you should consider buying a house right now, price reductions and panicking sellers. We're starting to see some really good buys starting to hit the market, and price reductions that are coming in make some of the best prices that I've seen over the past few years. Keep this in mind, almost 8% of the listings on the market had a price drop, and 62% of the listings now on the market have been, well, they're stagnant. They've been on the market for longer than 30 days. That's what that means. So you can bet those sellers are starting to get motivated to make a deal. So these two things alone are making a better buying opportunity for today's home buyers than we've seen in the past several years, if you can see it, if you understand it. So if you're thinking about buying or selling or entering the market, or maybe you'd really like to be a homeowner, but you're not really sure, you're listening to the news, you're listening to maybe a well-meaning friend or family member that says you just need to wait because the market's going to crash or whatever the story is, I would encourage you to do your own research, find out if that's true and if it's really where the economists think we're going, and if it's the best decision for you to buy now or wait. If you got questions, shoot me a direct message. I'd be happy to help. Have a great day.